Hey, what did you talk about this week?
Welcome back to the Corporate Kitchen. I'm your host, Tiger. This week, we've been talking about compliance, the best, worst thing ever for you. The reality is, they are a really good group. They're very annoying. If you ever had to deal with a compliance department or a regulatory body, you're going to know very quickly it's a very annoying group. A lot of people in that function, they don't understand the regulations like perfectly, but they do understand how the company is supposed to execute them and respond to them. So they're great for knowing, and this is one of the things we're going to talk about at the table today. They're great for that, for knowing how to cover yourself, that CYA game. And that's the first takeaway, or the first action we're going to talk about here. The name of the game is CYA. We've talked about this in other episodes, earlier episodes, that for your professional development, one of the things that you have to keep at the forefront is to cover your A. And that's for you, that's to protect yourself. One of the stories I want to tell you about, probably common to a lot of you listening to this podcast episode, is what's happening this year of 2025. The new presidential administration and the legislature, or actually, no, it's just the presidential administration. That group has instituted a lot of tariffs. Now, regardless of what function you serve in corporate America or what industry you're in corporate America, there is an direct or indirect effect due to a lot of those tariffs. The role that I'm in now is more of a manufacturing oriented industry. So it's a direct effect. We are getting a lot of people raising their hands about the price increases. So the first thing that comes to mind is like, how do we respond to this? Everyone has the same question. And even I and the whole company, the tariffs were announced. The first thing that everyone had to do, and the first thing that the compliance team and also the legal team did, was read the documents to understand who, what, where, when, why. The why wasn't necessarily, you know, in there, but who, what, where, when, mainly. A lot of them weren't effective immediately. Some of them were effective with a date given. And then some of them also included a timeline where it wasn't a permanent installed, it was for a timeline. They did all that interpretation. And once they understood, okay, here's the regulation, now they have to build the corresponding flow down for the company to hear it. And that wasn't like a couple days. That took a solid week for the company to be able to provide cross enterprise corporate flowdowns of tariff was introduced. Here's everything you need to know about it. And here's our response to it. So from a compliance standpoint, I thought they were the best thing ever. And you're going to feel the same way when you get into these situations where it's like, oh, wow, tariffs comes out. I have supply chain now raising their hand about raising cost and how their sub tiers are raising their hands about raising costs on raw materials and whatnot due to the tariffs that have been instilled. What do we do about it? How do we respond to it? Who's the point of authority? It's not a situation where you can just escalate up. I mean, a lot of people were like, oh, let's just talk to the VP. The VP is going to take the same direction as we are once we establish what the tariffs are and how we respond to it. And it's an interesting waiting game because if you do the research yourself, and I did at the time, I read the executive orders to try to understand what the same thing, who, what, where, when, and based off of my own subject matter expertise, came to an initial conclusion of, okay, if this is what the regulation is, and these are what the company policies are, if I put those two together, I'm predicting that the flowdown is going to come somewhere in this sandbox. And it did. And that's where subject matter expertise really helps you, where if you can do the research prior to and come up with a sandbox, it helps you be a little bit more prepared, and it also doesn't come as much as a disruption to your work if you weren't like as knowledgeable. Because it could just be if you weren't knowledgeable about it, you could hear it and you're like, oh wow, I have to do a whole 180, 270 on the job that I was doing. But for me, I did find the sandbox, identify it, and once the official flow down came, it's like, okay, that makes sense. This is in the sandbox I was expecting, and I execute accordingly. And you're relying on that flow down because that's the CYA that you need. The name of the game is always CYA for yourself. And this is a situation where it was out of my control, right? The tariffs weren't on me, they were country to country. So I can't really cover the whole United States just by myself. I got to be able to understand what the actual direction is for the company, and as an employee of the company, how the company is going to cover the entire United States due to these tariffs. And then even for the international portions as well. How do we address what's coming and mitigate the risk, keep costs low, maintain schedule? A lot of those questions in manufacturing are asked differently by different people depending on what side of the fence you stand on. If you're on the operations side, you don't worry about costs. You're like schedule, schedule, schedule. But if you're on the finance side, you're like numbers, numbers, numbers. It depends what side of the fence you're on that will determine how you react and respond to a lot of the changes. But for me, I mean, I was kind of in a function where all those pillars were important to me. Cost, schedule, quality, anything else you can think of. I I cared about all of them. So it was critical for me to understand what the corporate flowdown was so that I can properly execute moving forward. In that waiting period that I mentioned, all these suppliers are asking questions. Supply chain itself is asking questions. You got to give an answer. And sometimes, as we talked about with introductions and rejection, this isn't a rejection thing, but kind of related. Sometimes saying that you don't have the answers and that you're waiting to get them is an okay thing. I know a lot of people have a hard time with that. A lot of people have a hard time with rejection. And in addition, it's not even saying no part, it's the not yet part. Knowing not yet tends to be very difficult for people. This was definitely a situation where it was like, I don't know yet. Keyword being yet. I will know. Don't know yet if it's not mission critical to make a situation or a decision today on your situation. Give me a couple days. We'll get the flow down. We'll figure out what it is, but you have to give me some time. It's actually surprising how quickly some people were able to respond and already, knee-jerk reaction, which I think it was from some of the vendors were, let's raise the prices immediately. It's like, well, we're not even sure what's going on if you're having a reaction that quickly, right? So part of the conversation I had was also addressing their interpretation and understanding of the regulations as well. If you're coming to me before, my company, which I would consider bigger than theirs and with more resources to be able to interpret, digest, and spit out what the actual recipe was trying to make, I'm surprised your company was able to do it faster, right? So let's figure out what we know. And at the end of the day, again, we got that corporate flow down. I was able to properly address a lot of these situations, and I covered myself properly. On the flip side of that, I'll give you another story. On the flip side, one of the issues that comes up mainly in bigger companies, but it happens a lot in smaller companies too, and especially when you're dealing directly with a regulatory body, is I would say passion and frustration with some of these compliance people. If you talk to anyone tenured at your company, they will tell you plenty of stories of their frustration, their disagreements, their indifference with compliance. The action here, before I tell you the story, is control your emotions. Emotional intelligence is critical when dealing with people. Obviously, part of the game of corporate America is being able to influence people. Your emotional stability will directly impact the ability to influence people. Having that emotional stability truly will do you wonders and make you a little bit more stronger in this game of influencing. You have to control your emotions. One of the groups that will really test the button is compliance. When you thought you've gone through a super hard fought battle, you rose behind all the problems and issues that were presented by all these different functions, and you're ready to cross the finish line just to find out that compliance just threw, oil all across the last 100 feet, and you're slipping and sliding your way, can barely make it. That's will sometimes happen. And again, if you're early in your career, talk to some of the tenured people about this because they've lived this, they've gone through it, and they will tell you plenty of stories with some of the heartburn that they had to deal with compliance. An example for me is that I was in a procurement role for some time in my career, and in that role, I had to deal with procurement compliance. This type of compliance organization would check our purchase orders and make sure that they are compliant to company and U.S. regulatory bodies. It's interesting how you expect something out of compliance, but you don't necessarily get it. The thing I'm talking about here is consistency. You expect them to be robotic. So if I deliver you, we talked about this in the kitchen. If I delivered you 6 cookies and all 6 cookies had 4 chocolate chips on them, and the requirement was that they needed 4 chocolate chips, in my mind, they all pass, and you would review these cookies with the intent of pushing them along. But then instead, I get 2 cookies rejected because although they have 4 chocolate chips, 1 chocolate chip broke, so it looks like 2, and now it looks like it's more chocolate chips than the rest. And then the other 1 chocolate chip was so much bigger than the other, it also looked like 2, so they rejected both of those. But that chocolate chip that looked bigger was also shown on the same size as a chocolate chip on another one that passed. That chocolate chip that was broken had a fracture that was similar to one that was already accepted. So in my mind, it's like, if you accepted those, why are these not able to pass? So when I was in purchasing, had a couple purchase orders that I submitted. It was a solid, I think, 4 to 5 that got submitted. First one passed, fine colors. Second one, ripped the shred. Like, I got a lot of findings on it. And then the third one, a lot of findings similar to the second one, even though the purchase orders weren't even like remotely close. Fourth one, a lot of findings. Fifth one, a lot of findings. And it's like, I feel like, I feel the emotions that arose based off of redlining purchase order number 2 carried over to number 3, number 4, number 5, and that number 3 through 5 did not get a fair shot, and they were reviewed with intent to reject. When people inspect things, they really inspect them in 2 ways. You inspect to accept it or inspect to reject it. Inspect to accept it meaning that you are doing everything in your power to push this through. You're letting minor stuff go because your intent is to get this accepted. Inspect to reject is you're looking for any minor thing to send it back. Like anything that's gray area or that's borderline, reject. I felt like once we got through purchase order number 2, everything after got in inspect to reject. And the red lines were very thorough. So I saw this first thing coming into work that day. As soon as I walked into the office and booted up the computer, I'm expecting these purchase orders to be approved. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to start off the day with 5 orders that I just released. Right? Wrong. As I opened up my email and I saw the red lines that were given to me for purchase orders 2 through 5, I read through 2, and I remember at that time I almost felt immediately triggered because the first couple bullets I was reading, I'm like, this is BS. Like, this does not seem correct. I do not think I agree with this. And the red lines just kept coming, and I'm like, okay, this feels excessive. I get to purchase order number 3, and there are some repeats from 2 that are on 3. Again, neither one of these were flagged on 1, and 1 had the same thing. So I'm like, okay, now the water's starting to bubble a little bit in my mind because I'm like, okay, how did we approve it on the first one, but then the second one got flagged, and the third one got flagged, and then got flagged for even additional stuff. The fourth one was even worse, and the fifth one, I'm like, okay, this is just like, this feels that it's not objectively criticized, that there was some subjectivity here. So I like yelled, I'm like, oh, I'm going to give compliance a call. And, coworkers are like, good luck with that. So I picked up the phone. I mean, it's first thing in the morning. Like, so obviously I'm high. It's early. So they already know what's coming to get a phone call this early. Call the person up on the phone. And I'm like, what is going on? And they look, and we have a conversation. I think we spoke for a good 25 to 30 minutes. And 2 things came out of that conversation. Number 1, they acknowledged they went a little overboard. So a lot of the red lines that were given were kind of BS, and they acknowledged that. And then 2, we really went over the regulations and the requirements that was felt by compliance was not conformed to, and how to address that. With that conversation and me being able to control my emotions in that situation, mind you, my blood was boiling before I made the phone call, and I was ready to come in hot in that conversation. But once the phone started ringing, brought the temperature down, because I know that immediately coming in hot, getting into a screaming match with compliance is only going to make my life worse. You don't want to put yourself in that situation, and compliance can make your life very bad if you don't have a good relationship with them. So immediately brought that temperature down. We had that conversation. We got on the same page. And it's one of those things too, where during the conversation in the back of my head, I'm like, if you were questioning this, why wouldn't you just bring it up to me instead of like giving me this novel of rejection? But that's a mute point. Besides the point, it happened and we're moving on. We had the conversation, got aligned, got on the same page. I made a couple of corrections, not the laundry list that I was given, only a couple, and all 4 of the remaining purchase orders got approved. That was that. Now, had I done what one person did, where they were not happy with compliance and they got on the phone hot, yeah, that person never saw another purchase order again get approved on first pass. And you don't want to make an enemy out of the compliance team, because they will go through your stuff with a very, very fine tooth comb. I remember another quick story in regards to this. I had a PO, a purchase order, that was written perfect this was perfect. I spent some time on it, made sure that I met every requirement, and then I still got kicked back because because of what I put in there, they wanted specific information. They're like, no, 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 you go ahead and name drop those people. And I'm like, okay, if that's, that's not a requirement to do that, but if this is what you're asking for, I'll just go ahead and do it. And I had a couple of those situations where it wasn't a requirement, it wasn't a regulation, it wasn't a policy to do it. They're just asking me to do it. And that is, well, I guess asking is a stretch. They're telling me that this is the update they want me to do to make it quote unquote compliant. Whatevs. At the end of the day, though, because I had a good relationship with them, I know they were trying to cover me as well. They're trying to cover the company, but they were trying to cover me as well. They knew that if I properly document it with the applicable approvers of this specific situation, the heat will kind of come off me if anything went wrong, and the purchase order would have the documentation of who provided this. So understood the situation and I got it, but any requirements missed? No. any policies missed, procedures missed. No, like this was like a preferential thing, but in the name of CYA, and that's how it is most of the time. It's the game is CYA, so roll with it. The last thing we're going to talk about, and action number 3, which should come at no surprise based off everything that we talked about. Your third action is make friends with your compliance department. You have to make friends with them. They are on your side, and they are the people that you're going to have to go through if you want to reach that finish line. So, if you are running this race and you're trying to get to the finish line, don't you want anyone that has to interact with you in the process on your side? Can you imagine if you think of the person, 2 people. Person A, everyone is supporting them to get to the finish line. Person B, you got half the people with them, half the people against them to get to the finish line. Who will get there first? More than likely, the person with everyone supporting them. So it should be an opportunity for you to get a supporter on your team to help you reach that finish line. I met one of my compliance people at a conference, really cool person, got to know them on a personal level, and found out like they are very, very, very intelligent and they know a lot. They have a big background in being able to interpret all this regulation and all the requirements necessary to give the company the correct direction in compliance advice. So, with that connection, I not only initiated it during the conference, but sustained it as we left the conference, and continued to reach out to that person until, lo and behold, now I need to call this person up and like, okay, I need help. What's the correct path to go? What's the regulation? I know the department hasn't given the corporate flow down of what everyone should be doing, but I'm out of time here. Like, is there anything that you can provide me now? Here are the inputs that I have and the inputs that I've acquired from other variables, but I have no concrete output that I believe is right and within the sandbox that's probably going to come out from corporate. Response I got from this person was, "Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll absolutely help you. Here's where we're at from a corporation. Here's where we think we're going to land. Here's the direction that will be given to the major bodies to do now until we get to a finalized point. So the recommendation for your output is A, B, C, D, and focus more on A and B." So I'm like, okay, cool. And without that connection, I would have been lost in my situation. The situation I was trying to provide output in, I would have been completely lost, and time was of the essence. So to have that connection already built and be able to reach out to that person independent of a submitted review to them and just on a whim, an ad hoc call and conversation was very valuable to me. It also showed how important that relationship is when you need it. And we talked about this, right? You would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. You want to have that there. I have a couple friends that dealt with a situation in which they were trying to, they're in logistics. So they were trying to move some material around, and not just within the United States, but globally. They were trying to bring material from overseas into the United States. And the expectation was that it was going to be a direct, so from one country to into the United States. But what happened is there was a layover. So in that situation, since it's not direct, it's not an import from country A. It's a country A import into country B, and then a country B export out of country B to us in the United States as an import. So it's I think I said that wrong. Hold on, let's go back one more time. Country A exported it to country B. So country B got an import from country A, and then country B exported it to the United States, and then we got an import. That's the correct way of saying that. I'm sorry. The original one was that country A exported it. Because of country B being there and that import export that happens there was a plethora of new regulation, new laws, new requirements that had to be met in order and satisfied in order to conform to import export regulations. Because the the friend that I had was expecting a direct shipment, they only knew the requirements to do logistics based off of country A. Bringing country B into the mix is like, okay, brand new player, have to do research. Who is the expert that I can count on? Compliance, import export compliance. Reach out to them. They knew immediately what the requirements were, how to resolve the situation, and not only that, some mitigation tips to prevent it in the future. Without having that body of knowledge, it could have just been a request that fell by the wayside. And when I say body of knowledge, I mean like the relationship with your compliance department. Without having that knowledge in that relationship with your compliance department, you could have just been, a help request that fell by the wayside. It's like, hey, this happened and I really need this urgently. And they're like, okay, the process is we'll get back to you when we get back to you, or the process is the process. With that relationship, that person was able to call their logistics compliance person, and the person they had a good working relationship with got the answers they needed same day. Same day. That is the type of service we all want. We want that same day service when we are in a critical crunch. And when we are in those critical crunch, the pressure's up. We all feel the pressure and we all want answers as fast as possible. In those situations, one of the hardest parts in resolution is knowing the right person and trying to influence the right person. If you already know who the right person is and you have a relationship with them, those two steps are done. You just make the phone call, you get them on the line, and you're like, this is what I need. Please help, and let's get this resolved. But if you know the person and you don't have a relationship with them, now you're trying to influence a person that you know. You may know how to influence them, you may not know, but it is a difficult situation because now you're trying to influence them with the urgency that you have to get answers as quick as possible. And then if you don't know the person, now you're trying to influence someone you don't even know. And that just makes it astronomically harder. So to have that relationship already established, you know the person, you know how to influence them, you can make the call, the relationship's there, you're going to get the help that you need when you need it. With that being said, let's go into the last story. So this will be the last story alert, and then we can wrap up this episode. One of the most golden moments you can ever have, and this is like winning the lottery type rare decisions. Finding when compliance is wrong. And I had one of those situations before where I got a finding on something that I was doing. Compliance came back and said, this is what you need to change in order to have this conform to requirements. And I looked it up, did the research, and found out compliance was wrong. And you get excited because it's like, wow, they're never wrong. And they are always correct. And they always know the best. And now you point it out. And I don't know why. It's like, it's so cheeky and like so childish, but it is sometimes a good feeling of the group that can never be wrong finally be told that, like, yeah, no, you got this one wrong and I got this. So I wasn't like arrogant about it. I wasn't mean about it, but I was excited to make that call and was like, yeah, this process that you reviewed for me, the compliance review, I got this finding. Here's the regulation. Here's the company procedure. Here's what we're supposed to do. And here's my evidence that I did exactly what I was supposed to do. And they looked at it. Yeah, you know what they said? You know what they said. What does anyone say when they find out that they're in the wrong? Huh. Okay. I'll approve it. Like, no reaction. It's just always a, huh, okay. That's nice. So I had all this buildup and like excitement where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna tell them that they're wrong, and woohoo, I'm gonna get this victory. And nope, just oh, okay, sounds good, I'll approve it. And and then all the hype immediately like dies down, goes away, flame goes totally out. Like it just ruins the fun of the situation. But it goes to show that sometimes compliance can be wrong. And it's not great to poke fun at them when those situations arise. It's not good to throw it in their face. But it is something that you do want to point out for two reasons. Number one, whatever you are submitting to get reviewed, go get it approved, right? That's you were submitting something to get approved by compliance, get that approved. But also, two, you might be pointing out an improvement opportunity in the process. This certain situation that I was bringing up did not show a hole or a gap in our process that there were needed to be improvements needed. That, as we talked about in the kitchen, the person's human, right? So it was just a human mistake that they missed. Thankfully, in this scenario, they inspected to reject rather than accept, because if they would have accepted it, we both would have missed it. So they inspected to reject. I got the finding, told them that, hey, no, this is actually correct. And they agreed it's correct. So it was out there. But they're human. They make mistakes. It's okay. And sometimes the mistakes aren't necessarily on them. Sometimes there are gaps in the process that exist that generate these mistakes. In those cases, if you find it, bring it up to your compliance department. Bring it up to the right people so that those open risks can be mitigated for the future. This wasn't one of those scenarios, but I was definitely hyped to let my compliance people know. If you ever get into those situations, you just throw it in their face. Just kidding. We talked about this. Don't throw it in their face, but definitely point it out and let them know and see what they can do. You know, it almost reminds me another time
Hey, you said last story. Can you wrap this up?
Oof. Okay. I enjoyed working on this menu item with you this week, but let's come to an end while it's still hot. Remember, the ending to one story is the beginning of another. There will be more in store next week at the Corporate Kitchen. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Tiger. Until next time.